The Institute was established to try and put some sort of professionalisation into what was then a quite rapidly developing marketplace. And rather than go through all the points that I have put on the slide, I want to just pick three out which demonstrate the things that have been most important, in my view, for the development of the profession in the UK. So there's the first thing, right from the beginning, we've always had independent accreditation for people who apply to join the Institute. And that process has remained constant from 2001 to today, so that we can keep a steady hand on the way that we assess people for their membership of the Institute. The second thing is I'd like to point to is there is an item on the slide which is just a bit off my screen, but that's just me, I think. It's there. It says IR35. I apologise for the initials, but it really refers to the way that government regulation can impact on the profession of interim management. And it's a summary really for a range of different things, which would include money laundering, the Agency Workers Directive, and in 2018 there was a large report written by Taylor, which was looking at the world of employment. Now, although we're not employed, we all are in business on our own account, there is an interface which government regularly has trouble with, trying to distinguish between people who are in business and those who are employed. Legally, that can lead to problems. So the Institute spends quite a lot of time trying to work with relevant government departments to try and avoid causing problems for the interim profession in the UK. And the third and final point, really, in answering the question, is to talk to the annual survey that we run. This has been going now for about 10, 11, 12 years, and it's really now established as the most authoritative development of information within the UK market. We have somewhere around 2,500 to 3,000 respondents each year to the survey, and it's an opportunity for interims to be able to express an opinion on the quality of service that they receive from the ISPs, the interim service providers or agencies. And that has helped over the last decade or so in developing the way that the ISPs interact with interims and improving, from the interim's perspective, their customer service. And the 2020s, a simple point, Enema has been born, and there are a number of factors which I've highlighted there, which will need to be taken into account in the way that our market will continue to grow and develop. So thank you for the opportunity to answer the question.
Thank you very much, Tony. Now I'm referring to Mr. Giampiero Robrozzi, and I would like to ask you a question. It seems that the market you operate in is still in the early stages of the development of interim management. So how is the market, the providers market, developing? And again, what in your view are key development factors to help to build the interim management market?
Thank you, Małgorzata, and thank you for the invitation. It's really an honor to be present here. Can you hear me well? Okay, thank you. I wouldn't say the Spanish interim market it's at its early stages, because it's been developing for quite a long time, but it's definitely not a mature market yet. Okay, interim management has been present in Spain for about 2 decades now, It started with the incorporation of interim managers from the international corporations that knew this solution or these alternatives from their Northern European headquarters of subsidiaries. And for almost 10 years, it stayed there, only in the international corporations. Then with the economic crisis in 2009, it began to spread among Spanish companies as well, mainly because of the rapid increase of professionals who decided to take this alternative path in their careers. But also then, it remained at a large and medium businesses level. On the other hand, when the foundation of the AIME, the Spanish Interim Management Association, helped a lot to develop the knowledge of the market in the aftermath. So in the last 7-8 years, more or less. And it helped to spread the knowledge in the economic infrastructure of Spain. One point I would like to stress about it is that this economic infrastructure is very peculiar for Spain, since 99.8% of the businesses in Spain are small and medium enterprises. And of these, 93.8 have less than 10 employees. So you could say that Spain is a country of micro businesses. And that is one of the reasons the market has taken so long to develop, because of the dimensions of the businesses. Internet providers have undoubtedly helped to spread the knowledge, to develop the market, and they have been present from the very beginning. At first represented by small boutique services run by specialized intermediaries who had a very large and well-connected network of professionals and very good contact with corporations. Then some active headhunter services jumped in, seeing a window of opportunity to increase their business in a market that didn't know the need of this solution yet. And more recently, by the entrance in the market of the big HR corporations, like, for instance, Robert Waters, Hayes Response, or the Adecco Group. It's not a chance, in fact, that in AIME we have both represented. We have professionals and providers as full right members. We are convinced, in fact, that under one umbrella, we can better achieve our common goal, which is the knowledge, to spread the knowledge of interim management as a solution for companies of all sizes in Spain. Thanks to this AIME's activity, we have seen a substantial growth of interim management market in Spain, over 30% year to year in the last 2-3 years, which is very good. But naturally, it has not been the only factor. We cannot say that only AIME achieved that. We have to also take in consideration the globalized market with better knowledge of what is going on in other countries as well. And of course, a more unstable economic scenario, which pushes companies of all sizes to look for knowledge and expertise on a more flexible basis. I hope that had helped to give a light on the situation here in Spain. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gianpiero. You will all be glad to know that some of our participants are writing on the chat that they are very interested in this international perspective that you are bringing to Poland, to our interim management market. My next question I will address to Mrs. Marie Strack. Marie, according to our knowledge, Germany is one of the biggest interim management markets in Europe. Could you tell us a little bit about the professionalization certification process that you use in your market for the interim managers?
Thanks, Małgorzata. And first of all, hello to everybody. And thank you for Stanislav for having me, and to Małgorzata for the nice introduction. May I perhaps first refer to what Tony said? Because, well, without stepping in there too deep, I could state that this is the labor law issue is a major issue in Germany as well. And since 2014, I spent a lot of time talking to the government in Berlin, and we were rather successful last December. And then Corona came, and now self-employed people, especially in those with lower fees, are in the focus of the government because they need help now. And I stated 5 or 6 years that we don't need any kind of support, that we want to work independently. Therefore, we have to start all that discussions all over again. But back to your question, Małgorzata. One point first, we don't promote a certificate. Why? Because the market won't value a certificate at the moment. So companies are not really interested in, and a certificate doesn't help us with those legal issues that are we facing since a couple of years that are really vital for us, and the certificate can't help in that way. Because our labor law just says if you are working within a company, and let's say as a head of a department, then you are considered as an employed interim manager, and no certificate can change that, because it's relevant what you are doing in practical life. Your contract is relevant as well, but what you are doing in practical life, in the company, that is what decides about your status. So we don't support a certificate. My personal view is that certification, is a good business for the certification body, but not that much for the manager. But okay, this is my personal view on that. We decide between, let's say, good managers and less good managers. What is a good manager? Most important is that you have got competence in your field. Let's say as a finance, an HR manager, supply chain manager, or production and sales manager. According to business sectors you're working in, across your function or issues and tasks you fulfill. And this experience is gained through assignments as an employed manager first, and then as a self-employed independent professional. And you need soft skills like communication, and first of all, your attitude, accountability, and commitment. And you have to be resilient. But you can't learn that in a certificate course, or not in a couple of days, not weeks, not even months. You have to gain that over years. So being an interim manager means you are self-employed, need entrepreneurial attitude, and you are used and able to work hands-on and do not rely on assistants like it, well, at least was usual in big companies. You have to work on your own and to deliver your results on your own. So as the leading industry representative for professional interim management, we try to foster professionalization and sustainable promotion of interim management. We organize knowledge transfer, expert and competence groups, and education or training, especially on legal things, but this is only what you need to do to stay in business. But you need to update your competence. Well, even more than an employed interim manager, you have to organize and pay for it yourself. And you can't stay in business over, let's say, 10 or even 20 years. I started my interim management business 21 years ago. Therefore, you really have to stay updated if you want to stay in business. And we feel obliged to organize updating training, to organize networking, and to make our members aware of new issues, let's say digitization. We started the first events on digitization some 7 years ago, and most people said, well, what are you doing there? This is not important. This will go away. All of us now know it didn't go away.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary, for your reply. Our experience in Poland is slightly different than your experience. It seems that in our market, when you start working as the interim manager, then such a certification may help, because when you talk with your clients first, you can show your experience. And of course, the interim manager must have several years of experience of working in his or her field. But then the certificate also helps. We also teach interim managers that start their business, for example, how the contract should look like between the client and the interim manager. So there is a very practical knowledge that is being provided to first-time interim managers during such a certification process. But that's of course, each market is developing slightly differently. In Poland, it may help in relation to some clients. But thank you very much for sharing your experience from the German market. I can see that there are some great questions which are being put forward using the chat application. Tony has replied to one of them. Just an information to all participants. I will use some of those questions at the very end of our second round of questions. But we are still in the first round, and my next question I address to Mr. Jonathan Selby. Jonathan, you've been an interim manager yourself, and you know that one of the critical things in the success of the interim manager is to build trust and the relationship with the client. What are the key factors? How to build this trust with the client as quickly as possible so that the interim manager can do his or her job?
Good morning, everybody. The first thing. So thanks for being invited. This is a question basically for a psychologist. I'll try and do the best as an informed individual, but if I'm not perfect, then I do have some kind of explanation why. Trust is basically head or heart. In the business world, that means you do it by showing results, or you do it by character. It's very easy, in retrospect, to show confidence with results. It's a good way of putting trust in the bank. But if you want to destroy it, it only needs one show of bad character to make sure that you're out forever, or you'll find it very difficult to get back. Another thing I think is very important to understand is trust changes from one country to another. I mean, I've been working internationally now for a long time. In China and the States are the two extremes. Two different countries with two different ways of looking at trust. For example, in the States, trust is very much built on confidence. It's built on the head. It's built on showing results. So that's why if you go to the States to work, everybody is there referencing themselves and showing publicly what they can deliver. If you go to Asia, then it's completely different. It's much more ruled by the heart. It seems a bit of a paradox, but you're much easier in some situations in China capable of building trust, because you go out and do gambes with the customer and get hopelessly drunk, than demonstrating that you're confident, because they want to see you with the veils down. They want to see you as a person, as an individual. It's not, everybody has their stores and doing business in Asia, but I mean, in China, that's known. So if you look at it also in a professional way, as interim managers, we also have a cognitive difference. So apart from working in different countries, we have a different brain than entrepreneurs. So we have to build trust with entrepreneurs, which is not easy. It's a soft skill which needs to be developed very much in our different markets. I mean, in maybe Northern Europe, it's more of a relationship between manager and manager, in which people have the same mindset. when you work in Spain, in southern France, or in Italy, you need to understand how the brain of an entrepreneur can work. And you have to bear in mind that trust is built on basically 5 things. It's built on your competence, as I said before. It's built on your reliability to deliver results. And it's built to your commitment to the end goal. So those are basically quite hard things. And then you're also trying to build loyalty based also on your morality. And this can put you into some tricky areas if you don't find out what the hidden objectives of the entrepreneurs are. For example, if you're pushed in a situation in which you don't share the same ethics as the entrepreneur and he asks you for your loyalty, that is compromising to you. So you have to be very careful of navigating these areas and being very clear up front. And you have to be a beacon, you have to have your own internal compass as to what is right and what is wrong, because it can be different for other people. It's a relative thing. So basically, you have to give trust also to get it back. If you go into a contract and you think that everybody's going to cheat you, maybe they think you're going to cheat them. So, trust is very important to give. So when you find occasions to give it, you must give it. That means to everybody. So it's not only to the entrepreneur, but also to his people. And you have to understand the difficulties many times that this, in a small medium enterprise, when you have the owner of the company, this entrepreneur, who identifies himself with the company. So there's no real difference between him as a person and him as a company. And basically the trust you can have forming between the employee and the entrepreneur can almost be biblical. People do trust because they've had to put up with this person, or on the best scenario, share successes with this person, in a lot of cases by blind obedience. When you go in as an interim manager, you try to ask people to rule with their head and start thinking, not be dominated in a hierarchical structure, but to start being a little bit more diplomatic. And this can be problems because you have to manage trust in a developing organization, even if they're for a short time. You can't on your own get results. You have to use other people. So if you don't look at trust as a relative thing, not just as an absolute thing, trust is yours. It's viewed in the eyes of everybody you manage and everybody you have contact with. So you need to have the empathy to understand basically what makes people tick. Because if you gain trust, the rewards are great. You reduce time, you speed up the decision making, and eventually, obviously, you reduce the cost of your customer, hopefully making more money for yourself, which is not bad either. But as I said, the rewards are great. My advice, obviously, on this would be if you go into a company and with the head and with the heart, you find it difficult to trust an organization, think twice about getting a contract, because more or less, sooner or later, it's going to come out. So, as I said, this is an unqualified opinion by an interested amateur. It's not professional. I would like to send a lot of my clients to a professional sometimes to sort themselves out. But this is the way I view this very, very important element of trust, because we did a development of some key process indicators for interim management, and basically there were 3 things. One was setting clear objectives of the project, also for the temporary manager. The second was support, which basically means trust. So getting the trust of the entrepreneur or the head manager, the CEO. And the third one, the third KPI for the success of the project, was the element of resources, the factor of resources. So basically it's a cyclic process. You fix the objectives, you get the trust of the entrepreneur. He gives you resources, you do the job, get the results, and then you fix new objectives. As a circular process, this is a very good idea of seeing how important trust is in the periodical and systematic management of an interim contract. As I said, I'll finish here because maybe I could go on. I've been going on for too long.
Introduction to the later session that will be led by Professor Beata Skowron-Mielnik on trust. As you said, it's a little bit of science, but it's also partly an art, and it will be discussed further during the afternoon session. So back to Tony. Tony, according to your personal experience and the experience of interim management in your market, what is the best way to gain the clients, to gain interim management projects? What is your advice to fresh interim managers? Because my experience is that when you have already some clients and you have some experience in interim management, the word of mouth goes and it's much more easier. But when you start, it's very difficult. You don't know how to let the market know that you are ready for the projects and how to gain those clients. So any advice from your side, please?
Okay, I agree with the point that you're making. I think it's valid. So really, before you go to market and start looking for a client, you need to be extremely clear about what your personal market proposition is. So if we're trying to set that up, you need to be clear about your branding, where you wish to position yourself in the market. So that's what kind of industrials or service sector do you wish to serve? Are you going to be a subject matter expert in a particular field, or are you going to operate more as a generalist? Then how are you going to promote yourself? And you also need to be clear about what your day rate is going to be. I think it's fairly common that most interims operate based on a day rate. It's not 100% always like that. There are variations, but that's pretty much the norm. So that needs sorting out first. Once you're clear in your own mind how you want to position yourself, what sort of work it is you want to do, you then have to go and look for it. And in my experience, traditionally, there are really only two ways of obtaining work. One is through your own network, and the other one is through ISPs, interim service providers. The former, of course, means that you're looking for opportunity, perhaps even before the client knows there's an opportunity. So you're doing the networking thing. You'll start with your existing network, and then classically you'll look to grow and develop that, building it out, trying to find opportunity. In terms of the ISPs, and I'll talk about just the UK for a moment, according to the appropriate reference materials, there are somewhere between 500 and 600 ISP or organisations claiming to deliver interim management services in their portfolio of activity. Of those, there are no more than 100 who are actually properly active. And of those, interim managers in our annual survey that I mentioned earlier actually rate how good, bad or indifferent the different ISPs are, and we put them into league tables. If you want to go to the Institute website, afterwards, you're welcome to do so. On the front page, you can actually download a copy of it if you wish, and see, but it's split into league tables, and there are 64 ISPs which make it into those league tables. So the point I'm trying to make is that you need to be able to identify which of those ISPs is going to be most useful to you to help you, given the positioning you're taking in the interim market. So, for example, if you're in your corporate life, you've been a finance director or a CFO, so you're going to want to be operating at or near board level. You're going to want to be doing things with the finance function. There may be a particular industry that you're really wanting to work in. It may well be that you're happy on an international basis. You go and look for ISPs which in their information, in their promotional literature, are going to make it clear that that's a good place for you to be. And the Institute says that it's probably good to do no more than 15 to 20 ISPs that you build and maintain a relationship with over a period of time. Beyond that, we just think it's just too many to keep a working relationship. And it's no good just sending your CV or whatever promotional literature you've got to all the ISPs, because it's a waste of time and everybody's effort. So it's really about being focused on working with the ones that are right for you. In the end, though, they operate a competitive situation. So if they get an assignment, then they're going to put probably 4 or 5 individuals in front of the client. The client will look at those, decide that they'd like to see or hear 2 or 3 of them, and it's a competitive situation. It's what we call a beauty parade, and you have to strut your stuff and come out on top to win the assignment. Through your own network, it's only you. So although it's harder work, you have to go and do all the legwork with the clients or potential clients. In the end, when you build the relationship and you get to talk to them about how you can solve some of their issues, then it's you and the client. There's no other interruption, if you like. There is, within the UK, very recently, we've started a third approach. So the ISP comes free, if you like. You've got to spend some time building it, but it doesn't cost you anything. Your own network, same thing. But the ISP is not there in the first instance for you, the interim. They're there for them, the ISP. So the third route is where we've partnered with a company called Morphosis Partners, who will act as the interim's personal sales and marketing arm. Now, this costs money, but they go through things very thoroughly. So what they do is build an understanding and a relationship with the interim to really sort out their commerciality, where they're going to be most productive, and then they go into the marketplace and look for opportunity, which they then funnel back to the individual interim. And for us, that's quite new. So it's only the last few months that's started. So I hope that answers the question, or at least triggers a lot more questions from people watching.
Absolutely, that answers the questions. Mari, and what is your experience in this field? How German interim managers gain clients and interim management projects?
Well, I'm a little bit afraid that might be boring because, first of all, I have to state that what what Tony said, and what Jonathan said is what is most important for us as well. First of all, it is a matter of trust. We are in a people business, and that might be the reason why we are doing things differently as in Poland. We have got interim manager with a long history of well, up to 20 years and more. So you have got clients, you have got history of your own achievements that you can build on, and you can build trust on that history and on transparency. So the two main ways to gain a new project in Germany is, as Tony says, first of all, it's the personal network. And it depends a bit on the market. Between 30 and 60% is gained via the personal network. And most of the rest is gained via providers. More than 80% of projects are won by interim provider through the sales channel of interim providers or of the network. And of course, as Tony stated, with an interim provider, you nearly always have the beauty contest. This is quite different than it was, let's say, 20 years ago. When I started as an interim manager, I was the only one. And the company was so glad that you came, well, just the other day, without a customized BMW, without a very pretty office assistant, and that you would have confirmed to leave the other day if the project ends. Today, you have a fierce competition, and we are the biggest market in Germany, but that means both the biggest market for projects, but the biggest market from the number of interim managers in business. So there is a fierce competition. The personal network is not that are your older clients, that are colleagues and banks and lawyers as well, or consulting firms. Sorry, I can't hear anything more. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just think there is some noise somewhere in between. And for interim management providers, we had a difficult situation a couple of years ago in Germany. There was a lot of mistrust between managers and providers, and one of our main challenges as association was to rebuild that trust. So we haven't gotten interim providers as members in our association, but we have nearly 30 partners, and we work together with nearly all interim providers. And what are we doing is to try to build trust, to have events where there is a personal contact between interim providers and between managers. And on that basis of personal contact, you are able to foster that trust. Another thing that is very important, as all that Tony said, is important in Germany as well, to have your business proposition, to have a modern website, to have updated documents, to be responsive, very important, to be responsive for every inquiry within, let's say, 24 hours. There is another thing, being present on social networks has become more important in Germany. We have got that Sing network, that's probably a very German thing, but a lot of colleagues gained their last projects via a first contact on Sing. The own website is not the best sales channel. You need to have it in some areas. As a marketing or sales manager, you need to have your own website. But you probably will never gain your new project via that website. But you get the contact to your new client via your network or the provider, and then they're going to look you up. Therefore, it is not really a sales channel. You need contacts, you need visibility. Therefore, the business proposition, as Tony said, is very important to be clear on your market proposition. On the other hand, if you have got the trust and if you have got a reputation in the market, there might be projects that you're offered and nobody else. That's what I had at the beginning of this year. Very astonishing thing. Therefore, you have to gain visibility. You have to be transparent. That is one of our major challenges as association towards our members. We try to remind the managers always that their reputation is the basis of their market value. And that means they have to be transparent, they have to be honest, and a kind of integrity. That is what Jonathan stated before when he said that trust is built on that. Therefore, it's always clear that you rely on your real achievements and that you should know your competencies, and you can only sell what you really stand for. And the basis of our business is trust. And if you get the trust of a client, if your personal fit to the culture is convincing, then you win that project. And the beauty contest might even be a very big one. Therefore, and the third way Tony described is very, very interesting for me, because this was my personal challenge to promote myself. I'm still having difficulties with that, as I started in the area where you didn't need that. And I try to build that sales channel, but honestly, we couldn't find providers that would connect with interim managers to help them gain business. Because, of course, they want to gain business from industry wherever they can get it, and not to go into cooperation with interim managers. We could look into that with the Enima cooperation. I'm very interested in learning more about that.
Mari, Tony, thank you very much for great advice to the interim managers from Poland. There are some more questions related to gaining the contracts, gaining the projects. So if you could use the chat to reply to the participants of the conference. Gianpiero, our experience in Poland showed that in order to develop the interim management market, you really have to focus on the education of human resources professionals and key decision makers in the company. My question to you is, do you agree with this statement? What's your personal experience? And if you agree with the statement, what are the activities you've taken in your market, to educate HR, CEOs, and the board members?
Well, I certainly agree with that, Małgorzata, but I would stress the part of key decision makers. As I said before, Spain, like Italy, are markets where small and medium enterprises are, the presence of is gigantic in comparison with larger corporations. So these enterprises are run by entrepreneurs or families that own the company. So these persons are those who have the last word on any strategic decision on their businesses. And interim managers always intervene at strategic level more than an operational one. So the first thing is you have to convince that person, also the entrepreneur or the family, and gain their trust, as Jonathan and I certainly and correctly pointed out, to let them give you the keys of their company and make binding decisions that would affect the future of this business. So for that reason, and for the education of these key, to achieve the education of these key decision makers, IME has partnered with major employers associations in order to spread the knowledge of interim management among this public. Okay, but not only that, our national congress, which we had a couple of weeks ago, is focused on what we call the demand. So our target audience is not as much as the professionals, interim managers, as those key decision makers that may or may not know they need an interim manager to solve their problem or face the challenge they are facing in their business. So these are one of the objectives that we as association have, to educate the market through targeting the knowledge or spreading the knowledge about what we call the demand. Also, major business schools have decided to undertake this education process by familiarizing the future business leaders with the interim management and their advantages. So you have in Spain, for example, IESE and ESADE, which are worldwide renowned business schools that have in their masters of degrees, they have always a subject on interim management. So that these future leaders will already know what the advantages are and already know when it is appropriate to hire an interim manager to solve the challenges they have in the business they are running. There is still definitely a lot of work to be done here in Spain about that. So we, as I said, we are still in an unmature market, so the knowledge is still to be, the need of the spreading this knowledge is still high. But with the recent involvement of the Spanish Ministry of Industry in our latest Congress, we hope to have added a new ally to this task. So maybe the future would be easier. Sorry. Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. You haven't finished?
No, I do. I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Jonathan, you partly addressed already my last question in this panel when you were talking about trust. But if you could summarize, what are the 3-5 critical competencies that interim managers should have in order to be successful in all the projects that he or she is realizing? 3-5 key competencies in your view.
Well, I wish I had a good answer to that question, because I may be a rich man if I did. But as I said, trust is one of them. But I mean, the problem is nowadays is that everybody is focused on competence, and everybody talks about soft skill. I mean, it's a word that's pushed around very much. It's another thing gaining it. I mean, I remember when I was at school, everybody talked about their first sexual experiences, but very few of them had them. It's the same thing with soft skills. People talk about it, but they don't do it. People are all the time looking to get new tools, to understand maybe the new technology or whatever. But really, the hard thing is to create it with this virtual veil that we have in front of us. I mean, how much, when you talk to somebody, I mean, it's more you look them in the face and you shake their hand. I mean, you can sometimes have more from that than you can from having a 1.5-hour web conversation. But that's the way we're going. I mean, how can you, for example, create trust and create a relationship when you've got the beauty parade that's in Zoom? I mean, I really don't know. I mean, I'm as lost as everybody. I just can't see. I mean, what I have seen is that with all these virtual tools now, and my redemption rate is gone down drastically. I mean, closing is much more difficult when you're doing it on Zoom than it is when you meet somebody face to face and you present yourself. As I said, your question, Margosha, was the fact of what are the success factors for a project. What we found is that we did a study some time ago. What we thought about was the scope of the project. Does it change during the project? Do you start it and then you're halfway through and whatever, and your client changes? Is that a problem for interim manager? Initially, no, because that's the way our clients work. If we continually alert for changing objectives and change of scope. A second thing that we saw was communication. And so you need good communication in project to guarantee success. For a larger company, that could be possible. For Italy, for our studies, if you've got a good communication with the owner you've got a good communication with the company because it's a one-man band. And you're not really worrying about management levels. If you're looking at another factor is resistance to change, which also affects the success of a project. It's more or less the same thing. If you've got the support of the entrepreneur, everybody else will come with you. So it's the resistance to change. You find it strangely at the higher levels of the company. And lots of times by the family. I mean, we've talked on, for example, one-on-one, trust between you and somebody else. Many times when you're working in a family enterprise, you've got a group dynamics. So maybe you've got a good relationship with the entrepreneur, but you don't know what's discussed on a Sunday afternoon around a plate of pasta. So you have to have everybody in the company, even the people who are not in the room. So that's another factor. And then we said the other things which are the success factors are they have to give you the resources to do the job. Not only the number of resources, but you have to give you also the quality of resources, which is sometimes neglected. And it's very easy to say, okay, give me 5 heads of salesmen, but that's not going to hit it. What you need to have the resources to do the job. And if you haven't got them, what we have in Italy also is collaboration between interims. So if you're in a company, for example, and you realize that you need to do a lot of recruiting, you get on the phone and you call your colleague who could be in another company that could give you a couple of days part-time. That's another difference between our areas. It's the flexibility we have to offer. For example, part-time is done by over 63% of our interim managers. So we help each other out. Sorry, I'm going over time here. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jonathan. I will have to stop you now. If you could sort of continue replying, because I'm sure that people participating in the conference would love to hear more from you. So you will be able to use the chat. And for the closing remark, I will, on our panel discussion, I will give the floor to Stan. But from my side, I'd like to thank you for sharing your personal experiences, for sharing your knowledge and giving us a lot of guidance on how to deal with clients, with interim management, how to develop our market. So thank you very much also for replying to the questions that we received from the participants. So Stan, the floor is yours for the closing remarks.
I said that we don't seem to have much time for closing remarks, but what I would say is my takeaway from this discussion is that while there are obvious differences between countries in terms of market segmentation, in terms of the nature of projects, in terms of the maturity of the different markets, there is clearly one thing that comes up all the time, which is trust. And I'm very happy to see that we have included this topic several times during today's program, because we have 2 other elements of today's conference talking on trust, one from an empirical standpoint and another from a more research-based scientific standpoint. But we will come back to that. Dear panel participants, I would like to thank you very much for your insights and the valuable discussion that we have witnessed. We are only starting our international cooperation within INIMA, but I'm sure that there will be many more interactions like this one, enabling us to better understand how our markets work. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.